Deuteronomy, the prophecy went through Moses' will and Moses' thought. In the first 4 books of the Torah, it did not go through Moses' persona. The prophecy went through as if Moses were a channel, were a wire, were like a vessel that you use, like a funnel, that just allows the wine to go through from the large barrel to the bottle. He merely channeled the words of God to us. He had no influence on the Word of God. And so the 3 stages of prophecy are Moses in the first 4 books. The second stage, that was the last stage that Bilam went through. The second stage is Moses in the book of Deuteronomy, and perhaps the elders, Joshua and the elders who received from Moses. And the third level of prophecy is the prophets, or all of the other prophets, who spoke in God's name but had their own will and had the choice to prophesy or not to prophesy. The Rebbe indicates that the second level of prophecy has an advantage over the third level, the ultimate level of prophecy. That in the second stage, where even though you're an entity, it's going through you as a person with your feelings and thoughts, there's an advantage over the prophecy that goes through you without any kind of tinging of the individual. And this is because in order to go through the intellect and emotion of the prophet, godliness has to descend from its level, and in the process comes from a much, much higher level. In other words, when the Torah has to come and make sense to the rabbi, then the Torah is coming from a higher source than if it was merely the tradition. When the rabbi has to understand and issue a verdict, then the wisdom of the Torah must come down into the intellect of the Rav. And the wisdom of the Torah, in order to descend to the level of the Rav, must come from a much, much higher level. For in order to go lower, you must go more deeply into yourself. And so, even though outwardly the book of Deuteronomy is not God's words, it comes from a higher source, if you could say that, from within godliness, the ultimate level of godliness. And so, with Bilam, there was a problem, because Bilam was unpure. He was a wicked person, and therefore, if it goes through any of his persona, it can be tainted. That's why the third blessing of Bilam is untainted. The blessing of Matovu, O Halecha, O Yaakov, how goodly are your tents, O Jacob. And that's why we have that as part of our prayers, because that statement came directly from God. The third prophecy of Bilam comes directly from God. It does not go through Bilam's personality. But once the person has gone through total devotion to God, there is an advantage that God's prophecy is not as direct, but goes through the process of the person, because in the process of going through the person's own will and the person's own understanding, the godliness that is manifest is of a higher nature. And therefore, in certain ways, the book of Deuteronomy is higher than the other 4 books. And this is also the level of the Mashiach. Mashiach's prophecy is said to be korov, close to the level of Moses. What does this mean? It means that the prophecy will go through the intellect, the feelings of the Mashiach, because the Mashiach will be totally devoted to God, and there is no I that will really get in the way. And therefore, there will be greater revelation when it comes to the mind and the heart of Mashiach than if the Mashiach was merely a channel.